First, it is a great honor to be with you today to say a few words about my dear friend, Ethel Kennedy. Most Americans got to know Ethel as a wife, a mother, a grandmother, a great-grandmother. You can hear some of those great-grandchildren hollering as we speak. The woman who, standing alongside her husband, Bobby, helped tap the idealism of an entire generation. The matriarch who instilled a commitment to justice in her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren and helped raise a legion of change makers and public servants. And she was proud of those roles. She loved family, just as she loved friendship. But as anyone who ever met Ethel knows, she was a lot more than that. She was a big dose in a small package. While Bobby was shy and serious, apparently, Ethel was not. She was a spitfire from a young age. Some of you have heard the stories. The school yearbook describing her as, quote, alive with mischief. In college, demerits for a long list of infractions, including chewing gum and, quote, disorder in the tea room. I can only imagine what that was like. And that irrepressible spirit did not end once she left school, or after she was married, or had children, or became a grandmother. There's the famous party where she pushed Arthur Schlesinger Jr. and several cabinet members into the pool fully clothed. The touch football game where she bit the writer George Plimpton on the ankle. And of course, the rotating cast of family pets, dogs, horses, chickens, cats, goats, turtles, reputedly a hawk, an armadillo, and a seal. Not sure where they kept the seal. What made Ethel's mischief special, though, is how it was always joined to kindness and generosity and perspective and fortitude, in the same way that her joy, her zest for life, her love for people helped feed in her a righteous anger towards the many injustices in our world. Her life was marked by more tragedy and heartbreak than most of us could bear. And she would have been forgiven, I think, if at any point she had stepped away from public life or allowed bitterness to fester after all she and her family had been through. But that is not what Ethel did, because that's not who she was. We all know the story of how, on the train carrying her husband's body from New York to his final resting place in Arlington, she famously walked up and down the aisles trying to cheer up every friend and colleague and reporter on board. And in the years that followed, she kept doing what she and Bobby had always intended to do, fighting for what was right, supporting causes she believed in, encouraging those who were willing to take on the powers that be, lifting up the stories of those whose voices had been set aside or were forgotten, and making sure that her children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren felt a responsibility to do the same. She became a passionate advocate for everything, from juvenile justice to civil rights to environmental protection. Well into her 80s, she's still out there marching for something. Through the center she created, in Bobby's name, she celebrated activists and journalists and educated people about threats to human liberty. She was willing to go to extraordinary lengths to support any cause that was close to her heart. I remember seeing a video of Ethel pour a bucket of ice water over her head to help raise money for ALS research. I remember this because she then tried to talk me into doing the same. I wrote a check instead. It is probably the only time that I ever said no to Ethel, and I suspect she wasn't too happy about it. As serious as Ethel was about righting wrongs, she never seemed to take herself too seriously. She never put on airs. There was no pretension there, no attitude that some people were worth her time and others weren't. She treated everybody with the same respect, the same curiosity, the same humor. And it was that capacity for empathy, her ability to connect to people high and low, regardless of background, her capacity to see the best in you and not just assume the worst, that made her so beloved and made her such a force for change. What a gift it was to have Ethel on your side. She had a way of believing in you maybe before you fully believed in yourself. I remember meeting her for the first time. I don't remember exactly the date. It was shortly after I'd spoken at the Democratic Convention in Boston. I had just emerged on the national scene, not sure if I had even been sworn in yet to the Senate, and this newfound attention was a little disorienting. It was like being shot out of a cannon, a friend of mine described it. Anyway, I'm at some function, and suddenly this small woman with this huge smile and these twinkling eyes marches right up to me and grabs me by both hands and looks up at me, and I realize it's Ethel Kennedy, which of course is even more disorienting. And she looks up and she says, "Oh, I like you. You're going places." And I stammered something to the effect of, "Oh, Miss Kennedy, you're so kind. It's an honor to meet you." And she just cut me off like she'd do sometimes. Oh, stop it," she said. You know you're going places. Just make sure to enjoy the ride." You see, Ethel didn't have much patience for navel-gazing or overwrought sentiment, because she was too busy enjoying life and getting stuff done. In fact, if she were here today, I'd imagine her leaning over and whispering to someone that it is time for me to wrap up. So let me end with this. We live at a time of such rancor and division and suspicion and loneliness. And we isolate ourselves with gadgets and diversions, and we're encouraged to chase after things that don't last, and we have trouble distinguishing what is true from what is false, and we succumb to those voices that find it profitable to stoke anger and grievance. And even in resisting such voices, we so often find ourselves succumbing to cynicism or despair. What better time then to remember the life that Ethel Kennedy lived? A woman who understood that our salvation comes from turning towards each other, not turning away. Someone who reminds us by her example that life goes on no matter how deep the grief, that there is joy and purpose to be found, no matter what hand we've been dealt. That each of us has the power, if we so choose, to make our world a little better and to make somebody else's life a little better. And that we can have some fun and make some mischief in the process. What a gift. I sure did love Ethel Kennedy. I miss her. I miss her smile, I miss her warmth, I miss her generosity, and I miss her grace. May God bless her, and may she rest in eternal peace.
To all of you who are gathered here, I was trying to think of whether I could say anything that would add to what others have said. And I doubt that I can, but I will tell you this. I thought your mother was the cat's meow. She would flirt with me in the most innocent ways. I remember once I said, you know, we're not at replacement population anymore, and all the politics are anti-immigrant. What are we going to do? I said, we need more people like you. 11 kids times a couple of 100,000, and we're back in business. And she said, no, that's not a good idea. You can't do this unless you really want to. So I say, first of all, she really wanted to be your mothers, your grandmothers, your mother-in-laws, your great-grandmothers. And she was an amazing fireball of continuous energy. It was wonderful to be around her. I remember I loved all these Valentine cards. There's a bunch of them downstairs. And they're very political. I've got one with President Biden, one with President Obama, one with me. She covered the waterfront. But they're wonderful. And I think my favorite one had about 60 pictures of all of you, various family members, all cut out with small heart shapes. And it was always, all of them always had a little poem, you know, around it. So I kept looking at it and looking at it. And let's see, I've actually got a picture of it here. I asked for it, but I love the little poem. Roses are red, violets are blue. I'm surrounded by love, but there's still room for you. I think that's the way she made us all feel. There was still room. That there is an incredible capacity to expand. I love listening to the speaker talk about her experiences with her. You just had the feeling that, you know, nobody should be this upbeat, having been through everything she has. And yet she is. She is totally on the level. In a cynical, divided world where it seems like we all waste too much time with people trying to play us or being played, she was on the level. Day in and day out, person in and person out, always making you feel like you made a difference. I remember back in 2000, right as I was leaving the White House, Hillary had been elected to the Senate, to the same seat that Robert Kennedy had occupied as a senator from New York. So Ethel called me and said if I needed any instruction in how to be a Senate spouse from New York, she'd be happy to provide it free of charge. Then, when we moved into this old farmhouse, it's about 125 years old now, she gave me this amazing gift, a letter signed by George Clinton, who served in 2 stints as governor of New York for 21 years. We were not related, but it was she knew what the deal was. So, and in between, he was vice president. And there's this amazing letter. So I hung it up at the entryway to our house. And people say, where in the world did you get that? And I said, oh, Ethel Kennedy gave it to me. She said it was part of her husband's collection. So I may be the only person who actually got a training certificate in how to be a Senate spouse from New York, from Ethel Kennedy. I can't even begin to say how grateful I am that she lived to be 96 and that she had her energy and her brain power and her love power right through. I can't, and it would be wrong to, dredge up every memory, but I am telling you, I never saw her. Even on sad occasions when we observed anniversaries of her husband's death, I never saw her when she didn't have her game face on, even when her heart was heavy. I think the lesson of those 96 years and all those children and all those grandchildren, all those great-grandchildren, is that the God she worshiped wanted all of us to be more other-directed, to think more about how our words impacted other people, how our deeds impacted other people, how our lives showed what we were for or against. I wanted to say that every time I think of her, I've thought of her ever since she passed. I think she is the embodiment of the definition of love that St. Paul wrote about in 1 Corinthians, not romantic love, but agape, love for your fellow human beings. The total immersion in the wonder that every human life possesses. And she did it naturally, you think. But when you get hit as many times by life's blows as she did, it's a discipline. You have to decide whether you will keep your heart open or shut it down, whether you'll still keep reaching out to people or clench your fist, whether you dare trust and dare love one more time. For almost a full century, she kept giving it a try. There was always one more time. But there's still room for you. Think about how we live. Think about how we think. Think about what we say about each other, especially now in this political season. Think about Ethel. There's still room for you. We got to clear the room now. It's our job. Thank you. Thank you for being my friend. Thank you for being Hillary's friend. Thank you for caring. Thank you for the family you built and the untold families you inspired. The good Lord knows if anybody ever deserves a quality escort to the pearly gates, it's you.
Thank you, thank you. I'm sure you're clapping because I'm the last speaker. Well, that was worth that partial comment, or concert. You know what he said on the way out? Can I tell him, pal? He said, if I get a Grammy, I'm going to give it to you. The only guy in this whole darn church who can't sing a note. My dad used to have a band and sing. He said, Joe, I don't know where the hell you came from. You can't carry a tune. You can't sing. You can't dance. I don't know where you came from, but I love you anyway. Father McMillan, thank you for everything. Thank you for being so good to us. President Clinton, President Obama, distinguished guests, the Kennedy family, children, grandchildren, great-grandchildren, and extended family. It's been an emotional journey listening to all of you. When I knew I was going to be the last speaker, I thought, how did that happen? Because, you know, it brings back so many memories. Ethel was always there for so many people, and she played an essential role in my life as well, maybe a little different than with others. She was there as soon as I entered political office in 1972 as a 29-year-old kid before I got sworn in. I was in her brother-in-law's office, Teddy's office, hiring staff. I was only 29. You have to be 30 years old to be sworn in, and I wasn't 30 yet. And I got a phone call from the fire department by my house. It said, there'd been an accident. Tractor trailer broadside at my wife's automobile, Christmas shopping, the Christmas tree on top, December 18th, and killed my wife and killed my daughter, and my boys weren't expected to live. When I lost my family, and she was there, Joe, your mom was there, then. As soon as I got elected president, I received a letter from your mom. The letterhead was titled Mrs. Robert Kennedy, and in her very neat handwriting, she had written that she took great comfort in knowing the country was in good hands. She had no idea for a 29-year-old kid in that circumstance how much it meant. Because as some of you know, Bill knows, I didn't plan on sticking around after that accident. She said she was honored and proud. There was a bust of her husband, Bobby Kennedy, in my office, the Oval Office. I had only two political heroes in my life, Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy. Not a joke. So I didn't realize, my two colleagues who were president know, you get to pick what you want in your office, and I wanted to be able to see both of them from the Resolute desk by the fireplace, Dr. King and Bobby Kennedy. And days later, I received another letter from her that I'll always remember, that I know all of you look forward to each year. a Valentine card. A Valentine card. Which, in our house, Valentine's Day is known as Jill's holiday. Like Ethel, Jill is a practical joker. It was no surprise that Jill loved Ethel's card that year, which said, "I'm not sure the 100 others who receive it felt the same way," because apparently she sent that card, she sent to everyone that year. It was a picture of me and Ethel surrounded by hearts. Oh, you think I'm kidding? It meant a lot to me, I'm telling you. Printed the language on the card, it said, in the printed language of the card, it said, "I'm not biding my time waiting for you, Valentine." And then in her handwriting she says, "'Cause he's no ordinary Joe." I don't know how many got that damn Valentine, but I tell you what, it meant a lot to me. I've received a lot of honors in my life, but that might be the best one I ever received. You know, yes, Ethel was Mrs. Robert Kennedy. She was one of my he was one of my political heroes, but I always knew her as Ethel Kennedy, a hero in her own right. I loved Bobby Kennedy. I've only met him once when I was at Syracuse Law School and he was campaigning. But I admired him so damn much. I've told John Kerry this, my buddy. I could picture Bobby at my kitchen table with my dad and my mom. I could picture him there. But you know, Ethel was a hero in her own right, full of character, full of integrity and empathy. Genuine empathy. She's full of laughter and joy and light. She's a great athlete in her own right, for real. She was a mother. Literally, there was nothing from my perspective, and I suspect most of you, that she couldn't do. Nothing. 4 years later, after Bobby, she lost her beloved Bobby, she invited me and my boys to her home after the accident. Left my family broken, having lost my wife and daughter and my boys barely making it. Along with Teddy, she got me through a time I didn't want to stick around. I wanted no part of being in the Congress or the Senate. I mean it. I'd spoken to my governor, because we had elected a Democratic governor, to find a replacement for me. But Teddy and Ethel Kennedy would hear none of it. You know, the fact is, like she did for the country, Ethel helped my family find a way forward with principle and purpose. We saw how she picked up Bobby's cause and stamped her own mark on the country. Marching for civil rights that you heard about today, and working to end poverty at home, attempting to secure peace abroad, and so much more. She once said, for anyone to achieve something, you have to show a little courage. You're only on this earth once. You must give it all you've got. Reminded me of my mom. My mom used to say, Joey, courage lives in every heart, and one day it will be called upon. Be ready to stand up. And that's from Catherine Eugenia Finnegan Biden. She meant it. She meant it. For over 50 years, with Ethel's own iron will and moral courage, she gave it everything she had. And we're a better nation and a better world because of Ethel Kennedy. Let me close with this. On a Sunday in May this year, I delivered a commencement speech at Morehouse College in Atlanta. I noted that had we been in church that day, there would be a reflection about the resurrection and redemption. We remember Jesus was buried on Friday, and on Sunday he rose again. We don't talk nearly enough about that Saturday when his disciples felt all hope was lost. All hope was lost. In our lives, in the life of our nation, we have those Saturdays. Thank God your mom, your grandma, your great-grandma was there for me. To bear witness to the day before glory. To see people's pain and not look away. What work is to be done on Saturday is to move pain to purpose. How can faith get a person, get a nation through what is coming? Well, my message to all of us here today, to the entire country, is a look to Ethel Kennedy's faith. To the Kennedy family, presumptuous of me to say this and maybe sound inappropriate, but to the Kennedy family, the Biden family is here for you, as you've always been for us. You changed the life of my boys. You really did. When I lost my son Bo, was Attorney General of the state of Delaware. And he volunteered to join the National Guard as Attorney General. You either have to be state property or federal property. He temporarily gave up his office to go with his unit for a year in Iraq. And unfortunately, I was in and out of Iraq, as Barack knows, and Afghanistan 30-some times. I got to see him several times. But the bad news was he was about a quarter to a half mile away from a burn pit. 100 yards long, 10 feet deep, burning everything from waste to everything. Poisoning the air. And he came home with stage 4 glioblastoma. And he died. Your mom was there then too. I apologize. So, from the Biden family to the Kennedy family, a hymn that's very close to our heart, based on the 91st Psalm, goes like this. May he raise you up on eagle's wings and bear you on the breath of dawn, and make you to shine like the sun, and hold you in the palm of his hand. May God bless Ethel Kennedy, and maybe she be reunited with the blessed pieces of her soul in heaven. God bless you all, and thank you for letting me participate. Thank you.